United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. I'll turn it over to you for a minute.
Customary now, but conflict of interest statement. My wife is a teacher at Memorial Elementary. Today on the agenda, we're discussing the budgets for the elementary schools. I don't believe her actual position is what we discussed today, but anything else related to that school presents a appearance of conflict of interest, and Massachusetts law requires that I disclose this potential conflict and assure the committee and the public that I can consider this matter objectively.
Agree. Okay, with that, could I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, could I get a motion to approve the minutes of 1/9/23?
Motion to approve minutes from the meeting on June.
Second? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, that carries too. No comments today, really. We're gonna move right into the pieces we need to get into. And then any community comments? We have a lot of community members here, but maybe they're waiting for the special presentations. Not sure, okay. Well, then with that, then we will not wait anymore. We'll get to the Clough student presentation.
I don't have hers in.
That's okay, we can go without for now.
Oh, wait, no, I
It's
do.
there.
I do, it's there under background notes under Clough Elementary students. Yeah, there we go. Thank you.
So, good evening. I'm very excited to be here. My name is Liz Garden. I'm the principal of Clough Elementary School, and I have brought some amazing fourth graders with me today to talk about something really awesome that is going on at Clough. We were fortunate enough to receive a $5,000 grant through the Mass Cultural Council. And so we have a writer in residence coming and spending 10 weeks with our fourth graders. And they are going to tell you all about this experience. But I will say that, first of all, when I asked them to come and speak, they were slightly excited. And I said, I want you to share your words. So what they share with you tonight, I typed it, but they told me what to type. And you will hear them really sharing their thoughts about this process. And then I'll share a little bit at the end about just some of the feedback we've already received. So I will let.
Hello, my name is Sam Swayze. The first day Motoko came to Clough, I didn't know what to expect. But once we were together in the cafeteria for the opening assembly, it was a lot better than I expected. She told us some nice stories about not being greedy or treating people how you want to be treated. She also taught us how to count in Japanese. And she actually told us stories by singing to us and talking to us.
And we're going to show you a short little video from that first day.
Today you read a story and told it to your dad, and gave your sister ice cream when she was feeling sad. We keep each other safe, looking us through each day. A little love and tolerance help us find your way. So I thank you for doing the best that you can. Get through this together and make your dreams come true. Today you told about one and made your brother smile. You also thanked your grandma and listened for a while. It's okay to feel worried, it's normal to feel scared. Grown-ups are not perfect, we're also unprepared. We'll keep each other safe to get us through each day. And your love and courage will help us find our way. So I thank you for doing the best that you can do. Get through this together and make our dreams come true. Lord will come to brighten even the darkest night. To keep us all safe and well, we must keep on this fight. To our heroes and heroes, we owe our greatest debt. Lessons that they taught us, we never will forget.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Abby Swinsky. Matoko comes to our classroom every Wednesday. On the first Wednesday, we divided into groups and we each had stories that we got to read and perform for the rest of our class. We were learning about stories. We are learning about animal trickster tales. Matoko only has 4 rules for us. The first is no violence. Second rule is to be original. Third rule, it has to be school appropriate. Last but not least, don't rush ahead.
Hi everyone, my name is Kanan Sanchez-Correa. We have a pre-writing paper that we work on and then we add that part into our trickster tale. We started by thinking about our character, what animal we wanted it to be, and then how we wanted to start our tale. I actually don't like writing, but Matoko makes it so fun and easy.
Hello. My name is Alex Moore. Same as Kaden. Writing is not my thing, but when Matoko came, it became really fun because I like to read and creating my own stories is fun since my big brain has a big imagination. What I have done so far in my writing, in my pre-writing worksheet, I put all the details on there, and for some reason I made a fish. I wanted the whole thing to take place in the ocean. My character is a fish named Chinchi. Yeah, we had to plan character traits, favorite food, and favorite activity. My favorite color is blue, and I love crystals. So my character loves everything related to blue crystals. My second page is about what the natural disaster is in the tale, and we are describing what is happening and using the 5 senses. Good evening, my name is Marina Korea. I liked writing before, but Matoko makes writing even better. My tale is about a monkey and a natural disaster. There will be a tsunami. Our tales will have to have a theme and a trickster. We have not started that part yet.
Hello, my name is Kaylee Vogt. I always liked writing, but as others said, Matoko makes it so much more fun. We get to be creative and that makes it more interesting. My tale is a pony named Star and she likes bananas. My natural disaster is a drought. We will get to illustrate a cover for our stories. Matoko will be visiting us for a total of 10 weeks. We will finish our stories up in late March, and then we will host a celebration of our writing. I hope that even when we are in 5th grade, that Matoko will be able to come back and visit next year's 4th graders. I think they should get this experience too.
So as you can hear, they are very excited about Matoko coming in. And I have had the benefit of working with Matoko before, so I actually kind of have a sneak peek and know what the end result will be like, but it's exciting to see it happening at Clough. And, you know, as school leaders, we get feedback a lot. And the feedback that I have received from parents already within the first couple of weeks is that, you know, we've had a couple different meetings where I've been with parents, and parents have said things like, my child never tells me anything that they do in school, but they won't stop talking about what they're doing with Matoko. Or my child doesn't like writing, like you heard some friends share, but they can't wait to write every day because in between Matoko visiting, the students do other writing work to get ready for her next visit. And, you know, certainly one of the skills we're working on at Clough is our writing, and especially about just being effective communicators, right? And so this is such an amazing project that is bringing that out of all of our fourth graders. And I would love to invite all of you to come. We're looking at probably doing our celebration. I think we decided on maybe April 11th, but you'll get an invite. But we'll do a special celebration where parents will be able to come in, students will be able to share their final product. They will have a full tale that they'll written, and they will also have illustrated a cover to go with their tale. So it's just an amazing project, and we're fortunate that the Mass Cultural Council gave us this grant. And I told them that you might have questions for them, so they are ready to answer any questions you have.
What's the next step in building your story, you know?
So we did this a long time ago, so we have done a lot more. So after all about what the natural disaster is, part 3 was about like meeting this side character, and that side character would give the MC, which stands for main character. That side character would give the MC information like where to go.
And how would they do that through your writing? What did you learn about having to write and add into your stories? Do you remember what it's called?
Punctuation?
Well, yes, but
Yeah.
dialogue, right?
Yeah, dialogue. So we have to put the right. So we have to put dialogue in. And dialogue is when more than one character talking to each other. Yeah. So different characters are communicating, and we had to. They would communicate, and the side character would tell the MC all the information, and the MC would have to be courageous enough to go and find whatever it was that was causing the natural disaster. And part 4, which is what we're on right now, 4A. Yeah.
Katie, you want to tell?
All right, so yeah, 4A is like where you go to wherever the place is, and like you have to describe the place and like how long it took and like how it felt to go wherever you were going.
Who's your
But-
side character?
It's like mine is just like an old monkey. So yeah, so then after, I think the next part is like you encounter the actual like thing that's causing it.
Is that the trickster?
No, I mean I don't.
The trickster is
No, the trickster is the main character.
Yes, he tricks the whatever that's causing the natural disaster.
Cool, very cool. Very nice.
What's awesome too is when they were talking about dialogue, I've been in and observing in classes, not during writing time, and the kids are then taking that conversation and, when they're reading a passage, they're identifying for each other. Oh, look, there's dialogue in the story that we're reading. Oh, that's like what we're writing. So it's just nice to see it carry through. And things like, when they talk about their natural disaster and they're talking about science and social studies to add into it. So it's really great, like how many different components are brought into the project.
Very good job. Very good. That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, we don't have any student representatives tonight. The school committee, because they're off on other adventures. We're gonna move right into superintendent administrator comments.
Thank you. So we have a request from the superintendent, she's gonna come on up to update a field trip that was approved earlier this year. So
Well, actually, it was approved last year.
last year, I
So-
really meant last
Hello, everyone. Yeah, so this is the trip that is happening this April. We were originally planning to go to Peru, very excited about it. And then in December, there was some political unrest and American tourists getting stuck up in Machu Picchu. So we've decided to change course. I gave the group 2 options. So I have 8 students traveling, and I gave them 2 options. We could do this trip in the summer of next year, or there was a trip going to Costa Rica at the same time. And I really thought the group was gonna say, wait till next year, and they all decided they wanted to go to Costa Rica. So we would like to get to Costa Rica. It's still during April vacation. One student who had his heart set on Peru is gonna drop out, and he will get a full refund from the company. Everyone else was on board, and actually we're getting really excited to now go see sloths and go and do that kind of stuff. So a little different than Machu Picchu in Peru, but still a Spanish-speaking country, and that's really what the parents in the trip wanted. So hopefully we have enough food just to switch. No nutrition.
Insurance is really coming in handy.
It is. Of course, I pick the one place other that's getting shut down right now. So I wasn't happy when I got that phone call, but here we are, and I think we're gonna have fun. I love Costa Rica, so I'm excited.
Any other questions?
Oh, the trip is cheaper. The kids are all getting that money back too, so I think everyone's making out.
Okay.
Make a motion to change the trip location from Peru to Costa Rica.
Second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right. I gotta go back to the basketball games.
So moving on to the next part of my updates. So I just want to give a quick update on strategic planning. So we have a very full team for our strategic team. Yep, make sure the camera is.
Sorry.
I love that. So our team is about 32 members, and it's very well-rounded with staff members and parents, and we have community reps from both the Board of Selectmen or Select Boards in Mendon and in Upton, so we're happy about that as well. We have awesome students who were adding a lot in that first meeting. We have school committee reps, we have administrators. I'm sure I'm missing someone in our group, but we have teachers, union representation. I'm missing something. So we had our first meeting this past Monday, a week ago or so. And we basically, what I'll do at these meetings and through my updates to you, I'll just continue to share the documentation and the process that we're going through. But there are about 5 to 6 meetings in all that we'll meet together as that whole group. And that was at our first meeting was mostly norm setting, getting to know who was in the group, kind of building a safe culture for sharing, and starting to do initial brainstorming about what we love about the district, what we might want to change, and just some initial thoughts. And then that was a springboard we also had conversations as well related to how do we make sure that we continuously update the community on our progress, and how do we continuously bring in stakeholders, voices, and feedback throughout the whole process as well. So that was some of our initial conversations. We shared out a number of resources for the group to look at. Some are new research articles, some videos, just what's new in the world of work, et cetera. And at the next meeting is when we start to do more visioning work at the meeting and finalize our norms as well as a group. So it was a great start. We also had focus groups. Focus groups are continuing through this week. Had a couple groups already, and what we're doing, I'll be compiling all of the information and feedback from the focus groups, and that will be at our third meeting. I think it's the third meeting where we'll be analyzing and trying to draw out themes. And then at that point, if we decide as a committee we want to seek even more information from the community, we can develop at one point what about survey questions and other information we're looking to find out that we might not be getting through the venues that we've had so far. So we're off to a good start, and we'll continue to update you. At any point, feel free to reach out. And also one thing I said at the meeting, so it goes to all of you as well, if there are new resources or that you think that the committee should see, or new research that's out there, anyone can add to that pool of resources for people to watch videos or listen to podcasts or read articles, et cetera, just so we can start trying to think in a more future forward way for the next 5 years. Questions on that? All right. So then what we wanted to do, that we're going to do at the last meeting, was give just a quick mid-year progress on our district goals. I know we have a lot of presentations tonight, and I know I could probably go on and on and on about every single indicator that's in our plan. I'm not going to do that. But what I did was share, basically we use an ongoing tracking document, so you have that document. I'm just going to give the high level overview here as a visual in the presentation. But if you're interested in seeing specifically, the document looks like this, and what we do as a team, as a leadership team, we keep coming back to this document, checking to see where we're at, what some of our initial guesses of our timelines, because sometimes our timelines do move, but our goal is to make sure that we're getting through all these steps over the course of the year. And then if we have any roadblocks that come up, we make sure we talk about it and set some new goals for moving forward. And so you'll see when I present in a moment, in most areas, we have some that are green because they were tangible, beginning of the year type of tasks. We do have a lot of ongoing tasks in our plan this year. And so I'll speak to some of those. You'll see a lot that have been started, they're in yellow, but they're certainly not complete mid-year. And we have a couple that are still in red that we've saved sort of to mid-year or second part of the year that we'll be starting to tackle as we move forward. So if you go to the next slide, because I like a good graph and chart here or whatever, I'd like to always start with the fact that when we do this work, what I'm most proud about our district, we talked about in strategic planning, is our strategic plan and vision really does drive what we do. We talk about it all the time, we think about it all the time. And so that 5-year strategic plan and input into it really will move us forward, and we'll be coming into our decision making in so many ways in the next 5 years. And so when we have our plan on the left, you have our Inspire plan, our last one that we're still in the last year of. We have in it our vision, theory of action, objectives, initiatives. Each year we have our goals that you'll be looking at. We work on our action steps. And the base of that, we try to create the culture of the innovative elements that we're working in within our school system. And then I also place the portrait of a learner on the right there, which is a big focus of our work this year. It doesn't end this year, we're just beginning, but you'll see that carrying over. And maybe it'll look slightly different after the next plan, maybe it'll be the same, but it's gonna be embedded in the work we're doing moving forward with the next plan. So all of this works together when we develop our action steps and goals for a year. So our first strategic goal was we're using the model, understand, support, engage, which probably all I've heard 1,000 times now, which is good, because then you can talk about it, and then we add in the plan and communicate. But we've been really working on reviewing, evaluating, implementing processes to access and utilize student data. And we're really focusing on student strengths, challenges, needs, and interests of our learners. And if you go to the next slide, please. Let's see, are you able to read that okay? Okay, I just want to make sure. Hold up here too. I can't read it as well myself. That was just me checking my eyesight against yours. So what you'll see, we kind of have two categories. You have the group related to implementing the student data systems, and you have the category on the right of improved equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And so we've set up and shared with you in the past our data assessment inquiry calendar. We use that, we go back to it. So when people and teachers say, hey, when's the next iReady assessments? It's in the calendar, we look at that, and we're planning out rotations of different surveys as well. So we'll be doing a climate survey later on this year, towards the end of the year, and that'll rotate out with a different survey next year. So we're developing this assessment system throughout the whole year, but we've added in inquiry, and we're doing a lot of work around inquiry, which you heard at one of our last meetings when Cheryl and the team were presenting. So one aspect in our work with S3 is evaluating our current school level systems for reviewing data and monitoring progress of students. So we've done a review of where we're at, and now we're working on updating it. So I feel like you probably have a good sense, like our goals when we have people coming forward and presenting throughout the year. You won't really need me to be telling you what the goals are, because you've been seeing evidence of it throughout the year, hopefully, in a lot of the cases at least. And so hopefully you've seen a lot of our work around data. I know Cheryl will be coming back in the future to talk a little bit more about mid-year data and iReady data and some of the work that we're doing. But we're making great progress, and it's been a huge focus for our team. It's coming up at all of our meetings, And it's just becoming a living, breathing part of our work, but there's a lot of work that we're still going to be doing the rest of the year. In regard to improving equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging, you can just stay back on on that side. We created a district cultural calendar, which we did share out with all of our staff to start the year. Our next phase, the reason why it's yellow, we realized, so at one of the schools, we put it into the calendar, like the digital calendar. We haven't done that yet, like as a technical aspect in our district calendar that would be loaded into all of the websites. So we know we need to do that. Once we do that, that's kind of the next step. But we're trying to then continue to talk about and explain more about the different cultural celebrations that take place across the district. We've talked about and included equitable inclusive classrooms into our new educator induction. That was the beginning of the year. We're still working on incorporating student voice in through like meetings and getting input. You see them around the table. Focus groups, students had tons of ideas. So I actually want to really go back to some of the student groups and follow up on some of the ideas that they brought forward. One thing that we haven't started yet, and it's just we haven't gotten to it yet, is you'll see it pop up as red, is the educator evaluator walkthrough tool, the one that we use. We know that it's outdated. We know it's not really aligned with some of our current strategic goals and plans and what we're looking for, and doesn't include culturally responsive practices and enough of the inclusive practices that we're talking about. So we know there's work. We have a subcommittee that will be starting, but we haven't started that yet. So now you can go to the next one. So support. So when we head into this strategic goal, our big focus is around the district's multi-tiered systems of support, or MTSS. Hopefully you're familiar with that. We started the year off with some PD with Katie Novak. So you can see that presentation where she splits the two parts of the systems from the multi-tiers. And we've been providing targeted PD and focus on inclusive tier 1 practices and supports. So if you go to the next one. So on the left, we have the PD, and then on the right, you have some of the additional practices and protocols and supports that we're working on. I think what we've had the most focus on this year consistently, we have the co-teaching training. We had that years ago. We brought that back to retrain or train. We have a number of new staff members over the course of the last few years in co-teaching inclusive practices. So that's an ongoing PD that's taking place. And so that's going really well. What we really like about that training or PD is the fact that it's coaching as part of it. So there'll be a general PD session, but then there's follow-up of coaching where they'll observe classrooms and give feedbacks to teachers, which takes it one step further. Other things that, let's see, you've heard about some of the PBL trainings that we've had. You've heard presentations related to the DCAP being rolled out at the beginning of the school year, and something that's in use, something we want to keep going back to make sure that we're using it, but that we did clearly communicate that out. Something we know, and it's on the docket, and we're just talking about it today, actually, the need for a paraprofessional ABA Tech mentoring and induction program, something that was added into the contract, but we haven't formalized a program for it. And so we're reaching out to other districts who maybe have that to get some best practices, and we'll be working with them to try to put that in place with the purpose of retaining and supporting our staff in these areas. In regard to the tier 1 practices and supports, you see a lot of yellow because we've started it, but a lot of these are ongoing work throughout the whole year. So Cheryl's leading tons of curriculum review work at different levels, ELA at the middle school, and then the civics, working with teams around civics. I'm forgetting some of the other ones because I didn't write it down. Spanish immersion, they just met on curriculum review just last week. So it's ongoing work, but one thing we're trying to do is really embed the inclusive practices in that work. And also Portrait of Learner, we're trying to connect how can we think of Portrait of Learner and PBL and some of these other things we're working on as we're doing curriculum, and start to embed them a little bit more so they're not as separate. For the third goal, engage, so design opportunities for students and staff to engage in authentic learning experiences that allow them to understand and practice the POL competencies. I think you're gonna start seeing a lot more of that as of this week. So basically, let's see where we're at. We started the inventory of learning experiences to see what is already aligned to portrait of the learner and start thinking about that. But I'm hoping you can explicitly, and if you can't, please let me know, see that we're starting to communicate the connections between portrait of a learner and our work. So here we have the awesome presentation we just saw with the students and writing and trying to bring in like that. That's part of the work. That's with effective communicators. When we have our Inspired Learning Day, we have a design challenge that's taking place later on this week. Very exciting. Did you see were decorations up downstairs? No?
Yeah.
Were they up? They were.
Oh, our students saw it.
They saw them, yeah, the fire, right, you know, like the floor is lava, yeah, watch out, don't be scared. We let the fire department know that it's not real, and we just have images. But we're using a lot of creativity, but at all of the different schools, there's a little take on that zipline design challenge. But what we're doing is we're connecting it directly to portrait of learner competencies. We'll have stickers, there'll be games, there's reflections, so it's very intentional in the team. We have a district team that's been working really hard on that. I'm just really proud of the work that they've done. So that's just one example. And then we'll have another Inspired Learning Day later on in the year. And part of that is like looking at portfolio systems and see how can we start to continue to reflect on portrait of the learner at our work. All right, and last one. Plan to communicate. So you'll see, you know, some of the swag here that I like to, and the new branding and logos that we're working on. In the upper corner, we have strategic planning, so I'll talk about that. And then we have a couple, I just did a snapshot on the bottom right. That was like some of the press releases that have come out from our news feed. But basically, this is all about the planning that you're well aware of, because I know many of you are part of this for capital and strategic plans and communications around branding in the district. So there are 3 buckets for this, and I can go to the last one. So financial and capital planning. We, at the beginning of the year, created an internal list of needs, started to take tours of some buildings with Ken, which we learn a lot about water filtration systems. I'm still not an expert yet, but I'm learning a lot as I go. Or there'll be something new each week. Tell me more about boilers or about that, and how we have the pipes not freeze. And they didn't, by the way. We're one of the few schools around that didn't have an issue. And that was because of the proactive work that our team did. They did an awesome job. I know it can still happen with the kind of weather we had, but they really took great care of the buildings and did the best that they could under the circumstances. So that was great. We've coordinated with the external consultant for evaluation of facilities. That has begun. You know, we're hoping we'll have that information in March, April, depending on how long it takes them to do that. I know you'll hear in the future around the audit of our digital software that the tech department's working on. We initially formed our capital planning here, said that we would have that. We weren't going to start our meetings really unless you want to start it sooner until we get more information, but we can set that up, that initial meeting, whenever you feel that we want to do that. I've talked a lot, I know, about strategic planning, so you can see what we've had. We had our district accountability review. We still haven't heard back from that review. They told us it takes 4 to 5 to 6 months. So when we have that, we expect that we would have that information before the end of our strategic planning, so we'll be able to use some of the info for that. And then when we get to our district identity and branding and building updates and communications, this isn't something that by the end of this year we're just going to be done. We'll be done with these action steps, but it's something that's going to be ongoing on how do we really develop this full district brand community as students come through from 2 different towns and coming through and coming up to Nipmuc. So it's always going to be ongoing work, but we've made a lot of great progress. We have the district store, so you start to see the swag around for that. I think we're still working through the logistics of having press releases, but we have a set schedule. I meet with a PR consultant every 2 weeks who will help draft different articles. So we'll share highlights and events that are coming up. They'll draft it, we'll review it, and then we'll push that out. So that's been really helpful for us. and getting information out, and just recently was picked up by Channel 4 News as a result of one of those press releases. So we still haven't heard when that's going to come out, but with Jim Gorman and some of the work that they presented on that. So that's great. And he also was talking about what we just did at our meetings. A lot of school committees don't have student presentations. So like our rep was presenting at the New Hampshire conference and for superintendents and said, in Mendon-Upton, you should do this, put your goals and strategic goals and your students front and center about the work that's taking place, and showed an example of what we do. So not everyone does that. We do that, and I'm really proud of that. So there's different ways that we're learning, connecting, plus we benefit from the communications that we hear from them as well, from other districts. We've worked a lot with our logos. Just had a meeting today, looking at the sign out by the road at Nipmuc right here. So we're working with a sign company. It's student generated. A student just brought forward and presented their proposal to me of three different options. And so we're going to be going forward to find out more and costs, and they'll do some fundraising. It's going to be part of potentially a class gift for the senior class. So I don't want to give everything away, but there's a lot of work that students are working on, and we're just proud of that. So that just happened today. We haven't done the marketing branding guide with the colors, for the district and font and all of that. And hopefully we'll get to that by the end of this year. All right, so that's my very quick update to kind of give you a sense of where we're at. You have lots and lots of details that the team put together in that packet. I don't know if you have questions on that. If you don't have any now, I can always answer at any point. Please don't hesitate to reach out.
Seems like you're on track.
Yeah, we're feeling pretty good. Like when we went through, you kind of have this moment in November, you're like, oh, everything's red, like, have we done anything, but then like we weren't supposed to yet, and you start, like, it's yellow, well, we did that, and then you start to dive in, and when we come back to it, so we check in every month or so in our meetings, and we try to see where we're at, but we're on track.
Green is done.
Green is like,
On
He's
track.
mostly done.
Okay.
yellow is, we've started, we're on track, it's ongoing. And then I'm a color person, so like it's just very simple. So then red, we haven't started it yet.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Great. All right. So then with that, we will move on to new business. First item, elementary budget presentation.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thanks for having Liz and I here to present our budget request for the 2023-2024 school year. You can advance the slides. When we sat down to kind of think about our wants versus our needs for the upcoming school year, we continuously ground ourselves in what's necessary and important for our staff, and being able to support them the very best we can to provide the best opportunities for our students. FDR's quote about not having control of the future, but having an opportunity to grow our youth and be able to tackle anything the future throws at them, resonated with us as we developed next year's budget request. This should look somewhat familiar because I think you've had a few presentations. As you've seen in the other presentations from building and district leaders so far, during this budget season, our development process began months ago as we continuously took stock in what we currently have and how we're doing with our current staffing and resources. We meet routinely with our building teams and advisory groups to collect ideas and requests throughout the year. And Lauren, Liz, and I have ongoing discussions about our shared staff, the initiatives that we share together, and areas of growth in curriculum and instruction. And we compare our observations to the district and school goals to help filter some things out. Both schools landed on initial needs to discuss with central office staff, with Maureen and Cheryl and Jay and Jen, and worked with the district leadership team to devise our current requests forward. I think it's really important to take pause and note and really celebrate some of the allocations that were provided to us. In particular, last year, that have really positively impacted our students' learning this year. So we kind of put these in a list in no particular order, but we just wanted to share some of the things that have really supported us as building principals this year. The first being the addition of an additional administrator at the elementary level. It's really provided enhanced opportunities for PD, scheduling and operational efficiency and support, and more frequent student connections. The administrative support with behavior, social emotional learning, parent communication, supervision of staff, and supporting day-to-day operations of schools has been really invaluable. By the way, Lauren was planning on being here until it got rescheduled, and she is visiting her sister in Virginia. So she gives everybody her best. The second thing on our list is the addition of an instructional coaching position, which was added 2 years ago. And in year 2, we're really starting to see the way that it's helping to grow and develop our staff, both at the elementary and the middle school levels, which of course directly impacts student learning. The coach's ability to connect with the teachers in a manner that's not always possible with an administrator is really elevating team meetings, data analysis, instructional design, and school culture. The third bullet might be my favorite. Hiring an additional BCBA has really proven to be a very wise investment for this district. I think both of us really want to give a shout out to Kyle Sears, who is working with the elementary students. He's our new hire. He began with a caseload, which was already pretty big, and has expanded to student support with our child study teams, students with and without diagnosed disabilities, providing professional development to our staff, both on the job and through professional development days. He is always available to help with an emergent situation. It feels like, you have the walkie, Kyle, are you here? And even if he's at Clough sometimes, I think he's still responding to me. And
I did say I'm the president of the Kyle Sears fan club, so.
Yeah, I might be the co-president. And he's always there to problem solve any kind of student dilemma that, when we've exhausted, our school counselors and ourselves and the team that we've had in the past, he always has a new idea and a new approach. He has unbelievable expertise in his field. He's really great at coaching our staff. He writes tremendous plans, and his follow-up with our teachers have really positively impacted countless, I can't even tell you, countless students this year.
And parents too, his connection with parents is amazing.
So thank you for him. The fourth thing on the list was the additional grade 3 teacher at Memorial, and I can speak better to this than Liz can. It enabled us to reduce our class sizes from 26 to about 19 to 20, which was super important for this group of kids. In particular, given that most of their early childhood years were spent remote, hybrid, and then of course even last year masked. This class has really benefited from additional opportunities to meet in small groups with their teachers, more frequent feedback and individual support, and the space to learn in the midst of fewer distractions. We're looking forward to seeing the mid-year data, growth data that's starting to come through. We're in the middle of week 2 of iReady, so that we can start to quantify the gains that we hope and we expect to see. And then the last 3, the first was really benefiting from grant money to support the initial investment in our Foundations Phonics program for grades K through 2. This is a daily curricular resource that's used to teach students how to recognize and form letters and sounds in kindergarten and to expand on phonics learning in grades 1 and 2. Our teachers are enjoying the structure of the program, and our students love the props of Echo and Baby Echo, the owl puppets. And again, we're really looking forward to seeing how this new addition of curriculum will support our student learners when we look at the mid-year data that should be out in the next week or so. We invested late last year in training for several staff members to become safety care trainers. This is a de-escalation and restraint training program. And this is allowing us to provide in-house training for de-escalation and restraint practices for more staff rather than sending staff members out of district for initial training, which is very costly. The de-escalation training gives more of our staff the tools to be able to manage heightened situations in a proactive manner. And then finally, Maureen spoke about our co-teaching consultation and PD. But this investment in bringing co-teaching consultants to support the growth of inclusive practices in our co-taught classrooms really is the gift that we'll keep on giving. The learning that these teachers are engaging in is best practice for all teachers, and we're looking forward to sharing the strategies, scaffolds, and supports that they are learning about in their PD sessions with everybody else.
So is this in sort of a priority order?
No,
It's just separate?
they're just, yeah, we just kind of went down the list. Maybe we should have done it in ABC order so that it looked even less like, really, they're all so valuable, and every single piece of that puzzle there is contributing to the successes that we're seeing this year.
Completely respect that. Everyone says that exactly.
It really is not in any order, I promise.
So when I'm looking at something like this, I think to myself, okay, knowing that we've got a restricted budget and knowing that there's going to have to be choices made for all these requests, right? You guys are the experts here, right? So what I'm looking for from you guys is to be able to say, there's an overall strategy that we're plugging into within Maureen's vision of the school district. Here's how we support that strategy and call into effect these investments at a later time, which allows us to set a priority schedule and put in a budget for this year as opposed to 5 years from now. Okay, so the problem we run into is you've given us nothing. We understand the request. That's very good. I don't want to.
These are the requests.
Oh,
We
yes.
already have these.
This is what we have. I'm sharing how much they've supported
I
us.
understand, but I'm talking about, as you present requests, the idea would be to give us some advice about where the priorities are.
Yes.
We will try to do that when we get to the requests. But these are not in any order. These are just things we're really grateful for. You can move forward.
So actually, can you answer that for a second? Because Sean does ask a very interesting question. He might jump ahead. So what is the payback? How would we measure the payback here? Besides your sanity? Honestly, I'm just looking at the.
I think.
I'm not arguing that they're not
Yeah.
incredible
Yeah.
investments.
I think ultimately student learning, what we're going to see, I mean, as Wendy was saying, I know you talked about like just looking at the results of the mid-year data with foundations, but I look at all of these playing into that. When we go to look at, we start to have our meetings next week about the mid-year achievement data. All of these like tie in. While it's a little bit easier, I think, to see, how foundations can have a direct impact on, students learning foundational literacy skills. But because we have things like a coach in place who's working with teachers on their tier 1, interventions, we have, a BCBA who's helping kids be able to access learning, all of those play into it. So ultimately, I do think student learning is a good judge of.
I mean, that's our goal for everything. And
Yeah.
anything that we're asking for should be directly impacting our students and their ability to learn in the very best environment that they can to succeed to their best potential.
I would agree. Thank you.
Well, and I think what I remember from your presentation last year with the assistant principal, and I imagine BCBA plays into this as well, was safety concerns for students.
Yep.
So I imagine that there's probably data out there about a reduction in discipline and
And a lot of things are cumulative, so it's understandable that you've got them in there. Having one in place is required for the rest to be effective. Those are things that are effects on priority setting as well. But it's a good idea to understand which ones were the fundamental steps and how much those gave us in terms of ROI, and then where the knock-on effects were for subsequent changes, subsequent investments that we made. See what I'm saying?
One thing that jumps out to me, so when I'm hearing them talk too, we talk about MTSS, we talk about the systems, right? So if we had the visual of the systems, you have all of these are different aspects of the systems and the people and the training and the high quality instructional materials and the class size and the behavioral supports that lead into the systems that build that structure and image that we do. And so what's helpful, I always find when we hear questions too, is because we want to make sure even beyond this room that we're communicating what we're doing, why we're doing, the impact of it, and different ways to communicate it too that everyone can understand.
Yeah, I think Maureen brings up a good point. If we had put the MTSS blueprint up here and the visual so that you can kind of see those outside drivers, really you have to start from the outside in. So working on competency, leadership, all of those things that support the teachers working inwards.
Right, that's a really good point. But what she said is more important, because what that does is it lines us up all together as a team on what objectives we're trying to accomplish. Right? So her goal setting and her structure is the most important.
Well, let's get to the fun part.
That's where Liz
Wait.
comes in.
Continuing on, we have, as Wendy mentioned on the slide before, where we talked about return on investment, but we also happen to have three key grants, large grants that we're fortunate to be able to have to benefit from them. As she mentioned, foundations, and I will reiterate and say again how I already know, because we've started to already look at some of our data, like just the impact that we are seeing by this program being implemented across K-2 and even into third, that this grant provides the materials, provides the training, and it's just, we're seeing such amazing results already from it, and I know we'll continue to see that. The other large grant that we have is Project Lead the Way, which, at the elementary level, completely supports our goals of play-based project learning, where our teachers are getting trained and being able to, share these inspiring and hands-on activities and lessons. And then finally, ST Math, which I'm sure you're familiar with, ST Math and Gigi and everything that comes along with that. But again, we're fortunate to have that grant to be able to fund the whole ST Math program, which involves also professional development coming in with our teachers, similar to the co-taught model, where we have actual trainers coming in and observing, or we just had, I know you guys as well had a modeling of, our teachers are watching experts utilize this program and then being able to put it into action. So those are just three key programs that we are fortunate to grant funding to be able to have. So thinking about, our strengths and our areas for growth, some of the things we've already mentioned, but, as Wendy said, when we've had the chance to be able to make class sizes be consistent across both schools, we're able to really focus on that tier 1 instructional practice and give students within each classroom the individualized attention and instruction that they need. We feel very strongly that we both, a strength is we have two amazing reading specialists one at Memorial and one at Clough that are, I feel like, more than reading specialists. They do so much in our buildings, and that is a strength that they bring to both of our schools. We've also both spent time this year really looking at our social emotional learning and supports that we're putting into place, and that I think is a strength for both of our buildings. That is a focus for both of us. We are both on the same page about how we are looking at helping our staff to understand what a data inquiry cycle is, what that looks like, things like a WIN block, a what I need block, vertical alignment of our ELA standards, developing common assessments. All those things are strengths that we have put into place. You'll also see that we say on the other side, though, that it is still an area of growth as well, that we are, while we are putting these practices and kind of processes in place, the staff are still learning about, what it means to use data to inform their practice, and they're getting, better at it, but it's something that we always are working on. We've mentioned it before, but the fact that we have the co-teaching training model is definitely a strength. So some of the other areas of growth, that, as I said, where we're still looking at how we look at data, how we use data, supporting the varying needs of students. While our focus is on SEL and the supports, we still are, having the benefit of using the S3 Academy grant to really look at the whole child. And that's an area of growth that we need to, we might be really good at looking in the academic area, and maybe we need to, spend more time focusing on the behavioral side or family situation or therapeutic. All those things we have to make sure that those are areas of growth. Writing instruction is something that we both know that our schools, we need to focus on it because we need to grow in that area. We've spent a lot of time on reading and math instruction, but writing instruction also needs to be an area that we look at. And then, bringing the portrait of learner competencies to life and providing even more authentic learning opportunities. While we are certainly doing that this year, it's something that at the elementary level, we know that we recognize we still need to, we have a lot of room to grow in that area to make our students more aware of what that really means and what that looks like in action.
Okay.
Here we go, next.
Am I starting?
Yes, yeah, sure.
So here are our requests. As far as the memorial requests, they are in the order of importance to me. The first are two classroom teachers. We are seeing continued steady enrollment at Memorial. We have 2 classes with class size pushing 25 in a class. And we always get new enrollment over the summer through the spring. And so I'm requesting 2 classroom teachers to reduce class size in those classrooms. We're seeing huge benefits in our grade 3 class with class sizes closer to 20. And it doesn't seem like a lot, but 5 students really makes a difference as far as small group instruction feedback and being able to meet the needs of all the kids in the room. The second request is for 1.5 academic tutors. We are losing our Title I funding at Memorial, and so we're looking to be able to maintain our current level of classroom intervention support in grades K through 3. So like transitioning those positions over to the operational budget. And then with increasing school enrollment and size, we're up to about 525 kids at Memorial, thinking about an additional school counselor to take some of the load off of Kathy Gurdon with her never-ending revolving door. It's a little bit of a different role than the BCBA. The BCBA is working more with behavioral and certainly supports us, but Kathy is doing a lot of the preventative, proactive work with SEL, as well as some of the remediation for kids who need extra support. Do you want to talk about yours?
Sure. So at Clough, I'm requesting a 1.0 special education teacher. Currently, as I mentioned, that we are, we have the co-taught model, but we are modifying it a little bit because we have one co-taught teacher, for example, who has to split her time between 2 very different grades. And, if we continue with that, which we could, we also then have the struggle of having students who are not in a co-taught classroom who still need specialized instruction. And so it means pulling a teacher from the co-taught classroom to support. So it would look like either kind of making sure that we could have a co-taught special education teacher at every grade level, or we would simply kind of have a teacher that's able to sort of float and help several different grade levels in the area of special education. Then we also have some elementary kind of combined requests. As you know, we have the Spanish immersion program at both of our schools. And as being an elementary program where we are teaching kids to read, we have students who are learning to read in Spanish, but just like students who are learning to read in English, may struggle and need literary interventions. And currently, we're not able to really provide that because the interventions are in English. So it would be, what we're asking is to have a 1.0 Spanish immersion literacy interventionist to support those classes. Also at the elementary right now, we share a team chair which means that, 2 days a week, the team chair is as at Clough, and 3 days a week, the team chair is at Memorial. But in the meantime, we have lots of different special education cases and situations that we're dealing with, and we're not able to kind of, we're finding that we're not able to meet those needs by having to only have one team chair that is split. So we're asking to be able to have an additional team chair added at the elementary level. And finally, hoping that we will fill, which we've had a whole lot of interest at our meeting, was it just last week? For Spanish immersion, that if we would have to have 2 kindergarten sections of SI, then we would ultimately need another Spanish immersion teacher at a different level because of the need of having that many classes. So another 1.0 Spanish immersion teacher is a request at the elementary level.
Because eventually next year we would then grow to 2 sections of kindergarten, 2 sections of grade 1, and 2 sections of grade 2.
Yes.
This year we only have 1 section of grade 2.
We'll go back to that.
I didn't think we had Title I funding for Memorial. Grandfather. Your grandfather did for this year.
Yes.
We've been at Memorial for the last 6, it seems to flip every 6 years. And so in the year that it switches to the other school, we can grandfather and keep kind of both schools so you don't just lose everything.
So in the years that we've had it at Memorial, we've lost it at the club.
Mm-hmm. Except for the transition year where we had it.
Okay. Got it.
And so what we've tried to do is kind of what they requested to see what you can maybe add in operational to cover some of that, tutors or some of that, to maintain some of the same interventions.
So what that means is next year, that Title I funding will all be club.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're getting double funding this year. So last year was single funding, next year single.
No, that's the same amount, we can just use it in middle school.
Yeah. And so what happens if we don't, a certain year, if we don't spend all of it, we can carry over a certain amount. So we try to carry over as much as we can over the years. So then that way, sometimes that allows us to actually hire an additional person. And sometimes it will go up in certain years too. And we had 1 year ages ago where you can cross this one threshold where then you get tons of money. If you get over 5% for a census year, but that's only happened to us once since I've been here. So I'm always hoping we're to have to get. Then we can kind of carry it in lots of ways.
So wouldn't this cancel each other out then? All as we move to the school and you move the resources around?
Yeah.
Right, so it's, okay. I mean, I guess we asking for something more than we need here.
Okay.
So in thinking about short-term and long-term, I mean, the staffing, we just went over that, so I'm gonna kind of skip that area. But, I don't think we talked about necessarily the requests for the PD. I mean, but I think it came through where we talked about the fact that, still continuing work on MTSS, things like, high-quality instructional practices, certain universal design for learning. We still need more, PD around that, and writing, as we've said, SCL, curriculum review, culture responsive practices, and then putting data into action. In terms of short-term planning, and I think you'll hear more about this in the next presentation, but the thought at the elementary level is that we definitely are seeing a need for some type of therapeutic programming that we do not have at either school in place. Also, and then long-term, as Wendy said, her population continues to grow. She will be needing eventually 2 more grade level classroom teachers at Memorial. In terms of facilities, short term, I am really hoping to, currently the before and after school aftercare program takes place at MISCO, where the majority of the students are students from Clough, and we have the kids start their day in one place, we bus them over to us, and then we bus them back. And I'm really hoping that we can move that program to Clough, because it makes the most sense to me to be able to help support the before and after care program, and have them be at the school where they are spending their day instead of having to kind of have that disruption every morning and afternoon. And then also we've talked about, again, I think maybe you'll hear more about this in the next presentation, I don't know. But we both have preschool at our schools, and the growing need for more space, more openings, the needs that we're seeing coming out of early intervention, a short-term possible projection, a plan would be to house all of pre-K at Clough, so that they could at least not be split up. We're having one classroom at one building and one classroom at the other, and resources and all kinds of things, having it all in one space. For a long-term planning, Memorial needs to apparently replace their sound system in the cafeteria auditorium.
I mean, it's such a milestone, right?
But that's just,
we're very fortunate to have the buildings that we have. Thinking about facilities, there really isn't, huge needs at either school for facilities, which is really kind of nice. And then, we've mentioned a lot of the things in short term and long term, but technology, I know, is not something we mentioned, but that is at both buildings. We're continually having to think about replacement of smart boards, or like our iPads are at the point where, I don't know, maybe 1 more year, that they will begin to need replacement. So that's something to be thinking about. And then, we're focused on certainly ELA and math quite a bit, but we are going to need to be looking at science and social studies and writing long term as far as curriculum review goes.
How much growth is happening? You said the projection is that, if I go from last year to this year, what do you think Memorial is going to grow in number of students?
When we look at the general projections across like the next 10 years, 25, 20, more, 30, we're seeing more in Memorial. I can go and look into the numbers, but we know that there's projected population increase. We know it's in both towns, but it's more in Upton.
Yeah.
So we know at some point we'll be needing to go back to the levels of the staffing for teachers of like 4 per grade.
4 sections of each English.
We don't in the long term.
And we thought we'd just end with some cute pictures so that you could.
That looks great. Not at all. There you go. That swayed us. Really, that's the end.
That's it. They are cute, aren't they?
Yeah.
That's worth it all.
What questions do you have for us? Any questions?
No, asked him one. Sorry.
Thank you so much.
You're going to sit here so that you can My pleasure. We didn't get the color copies because Jay regulates how many color copies we can make. So I apologize. Yeah, he doesn't know. I stayed late. You'll get that later on.
Are you sure?
I got it. It'll be okay.
This is the fun budget that everyone waits for. Thanks for having me. So for those of you who don't know, I'm Director of Student Support Services, Jen D'Angelo. And I appreciate you taking time tonight to hear our budget requests for next year. So this is my quote for the night. So I don't know if anyone is familiar with Rita Pearson, but this is the 10-year anniversary of her TED Talk that launched TED Talk Education. So I think that if you haven't seen her speak, I would encourage you to Google her and check out her TED Talk. And she talks about every student needing a champion that engages them and believes in them. So I'm going to skip some because I don't want to be repetitive. So I think you've heard some of the information already. If there's anything you want to ask, feel free to jump in. But I don't kind of want to go over the same things that you've heard several times. So the budget prioritization is very similar. We start at the department level. We have ongoing conversations with building principals. We look at prioritizing and the examination of data to align with our needs. And then we propose our budget. 3 big areas that we focus on in student services is student need, growth opportunities, so where we can kind of develop, and then compliance, which is my favorite. Super exciting. So first thing is, these are our investments in our students. So this is my 3rd year here in the district. So these are the positions that we've been able to include in some of the updates that we've done over the last 3 years. This is a nice place for us to start. If you don't recall, I'll remind you that for the last 2 years, I've only asked for level funding. And what we've been able to do with level funding has been some significant changes. A lot of this came from really examining what we were doing, how we were doing it, and looking at ways we could reallocate some funds. We had a lot of contracted services when I started. We've been able to use that money, reallocate it, and put some really nice positions in place to support our students. I didn't even pay the elementary principals to talk so nicely about the BCBA, but that was lovely. And it talked a lot about, adding those essential pieces so that our students can get in and access their educational opportunities. So we talked about adding 2 school psychologists. We've added 2 BCBAs. So we have one that supports our elementary, and then we have one that supports our middle school and high school. One was, we did it staggered, right? It wasn't all at once, so it was a thoughtful process. Our bridge or return to school services is providing ongoing support for our students struggling with long-term absences due to medical or mental health concerns. And then our skill-based curriculum is what we launched last year. So really looking at where the needs were for students, what underlying skills our special ed students didn't have or needed to develop a little bit more, and then putting really thoughtful, specially designed instruction in those areas to build those foundational skills. And then the last thing was our related services efficiency model. Again, we had a lot of related service providers that were kind of plugging in holes. So we've been able to hire some district-wide staff that have been able to provide services for our students. And then what that also does for us, and we talked a little bit about this over the years, is it also adds value to consultation. So they just talked about Kyle jumping in and doing consultation when we have students who may not be responding to educational instructional practices or different things we're putting in place. What this does is this allows our related service providers to also jump in and say, oh, well, maybe we need to call on the occupational therapist and see if there's a sensory issue that's impacting why we're not seeing a change in behavior. So all of these things work at that point. And I do have to give a shout out to Dr. Marushek, because when I came in, he was very trusting in me and my leadership and really allowed a lot of these things to happen. And I was new and I was coming up with some really big initiatives and really big suggestions. So he was, very trusting in my leadership, and that was important. This is my grant update. So for efficiencies and grant updates, again, a lot of this we've already talked about, but I think it's important to kind of set that groundwork of the things that we've been able to do over the last 2 years. We've implemented some web-based platforms around DocuSign and Digital Assessment Library. We did a review of resource subscriptions. So when we looked at the things that we were paying for, we had probably about 40 to 45 different web-based or subscriptions to different things. When we looked to see at the usage, who was actually using it, we found that like one program that we were using was about $5,000 or $6,000 a year, and we found 4 students were accessing it. So what we did, and we said, okay, well, what is that service providing, and can we provide it in another way? So we did a lot of that. So that's where that review of the subscriptions came in. And then our grants. So we've been 252 and 264 are our special education and our pre-K entitlement grants. And then what we've been able to do is really use some of that money to put some of these things in place that you've been hearing about. So the co-teaching training, instructional material upgrades, behavioral and mental health PD is this year's. So we've been fortunate to partner with John Crocker, for those of you who are familiar. John Crocker was he's a director of school mental health and behavioral services for a district in the Commonwealth, but he's also the founder of Mass School Mental Health Consortium, which was established in 2018. And he also is a contributing member of Thriving Minds and the Rennie Center and does a lot of collaboration. So he's been working, he's going to be working this year with our counselors in an effort to kind of streamline our counseling staff this year. We've been engaging in counselor collaborations, which Evan is here. He speaks highly of our collaboration. That's an effort to kind of get all of our counselors on the same page. So we have great staff at all of our buildings doing wonderful work, but looking at what's that consistency, what is that model, how are we doing things at each level, and how can we make it more robust than what we're doing. So John's going to be joining us this year and collaborating with us. He's coming out the 17th for his first PDD with us, and then there's going to be some continued assessment. We'll probably be looking for some volunteers to do some assessment program review work in the near future as well, so I will keep you updated on that. And then our last one is Doug Flutie. Doug Flutie Foundation has been a partner with us for the last couple of years, supplementing some reading instructional materials for our students with autism, and then most recently our communication board that went up at the Memorial Playground in the fall. You want to just go back 1 second? Any questions about that? No?
Pretty straightforward.
I try. Okay, ready? Here's the fun stuff. So out of district cost. So when we talk about out of district cost, for those of you who are not familiar, is when the district does not have programming that suits the needs of some of our special education students, we have to look for alternate placements for those students to access their education. What I've given you here is a couple of different things. The top is a visual. That visual looks at the number of students that we've had out of district in our fiscal years beginning in FY19. So we have gone, I think FY20, we were at pretty 35 from FY20, and then we've gone down since then. So that is the visual for the number of students out. We currently have 20 students accessing their education outside of the district in programming. Now when we jump down to the bottom, this is a little depressing. This is the money that we spend as far as transportation and tuition, but what you'll notice is there has not really been a decrease. So even though the number of students out of district has decreased and we've been able to provide meaningful instruction in district, we haven't really seen the decrease in tuition and transportation, right? So the piece of this that's really important to notice is we don't have control over those two variables. So what we don't have control over is tuition, because there's a state agency that sets the rates for all of our out-of-district programs. And the other piece that we have very limited control over is transportation cost. Transportation venues are really limited right now. We do have enough vendors. We're fortunate. A lot of our districts around here don't have enough vendors for the kids that they're sending out of district, but we're fortunate in that we do have enough vendors. But when vendors set their price, we have very limited bargaining because there's such a shortage of supply. So I think what this slide is really kind of talking about is how do we best control our costs through the out-of-district model, and that's by creating in-district programming to meet the needs of our students.
So it's fiscal year 23, is that year to date?
That is year to date.
I was really getting excited.
Yeah, I know. I was gonna do it.
I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
what do you mean?
So are we expecting that fiscal year 23 will be comparable to 22?
Financially?
Yeah.
I am expecting FY23 to be comparable to 22. I'm not expecting FY24. So
No, I understand that.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're on track. We're good for 23. I think for me, it's always projecting 1, 3, 5 years down the road, and what does that look like for us, right? There's some variables again that we don't control. If there's a move-in student, or if there's a significant need, then that's something that we have to take into consideration. But a big piece of that is making sure that we have the program that we need to support our students in district, and then we don't get into a place where we can't have any control over the tuition and the transportation piece.
So I'm going to ask the same questions I asked for the middle school principals. Do you have a strategy
I
or
do.
a plan or a
coming.
prioritization? Okay.
Coming.
All right. Good.
Yep. Ready, Sam? Okay, so here's my plan.
Wow.
So here's my request. So looking,
Frontal attack.
yep, I tried to create a little bit of a story to ease you in. So therapeutic programming, so you've heard it from the elementary principals as well as myself. This is where we're seeing the biggest need. That's some of that supporting document that I also gave you in your packet. I know that they just did a state of the education at the state level, and a big partner with that was the Rennie Center, who's one of the leading organizations around therapeutic, behavioral, and mental health. So this is something that's been on the rise for years, and I think that we've seen an exacerbated rise probably over the last couple of years due to COVID, due to, you know, a whole bunch of variables. So when I come in with this, it looks like a hefty request, but I'm going to try to break it down to give it a little bit more meaning for you guys. So this is therapeutic programming. What we've done over the last couple of years is we've been able to bring in adjustment counselors at both the middle and the high school level who are managing our return to services programs. With that being said, they also have the capacity to support a therapeutic programming. So when you look up here, you're going to see teachers at the middle school and high school level, but you're not going to see any clinical or therapeutic support. That's because we've already established those in the last couple of years. So we already have people in place that would then be able to absorb that role at the middle school and the high school. Then the elementary one is asking for the teacher, but they're also asking for a school psychologist. So as you heard from the elementary principals, we've seen a rise in mental health concerns at the elementary level. Their presentation looks to add an adjustment counselor. I'm looking to add a school psychologist. School psychologist has the capacity to also test and then perform more intensive tier 3 interventions. So for me, a counselor is great. We have 2 wonderful ones at the elementary, and Evan and Kathy right now. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the elementary needs. But my recommendation would be to add the school psychologist so that there's that level of clinical support, but then there's also that ability to evaluate and provide that instructional piece.
The current 2 psychologists we have are deployed where?
Elementary, and then middle high school.
So we have 1 already in existence, and so we're going to look at 2 in the elementary level and 1 across middle school and high school.
Yeah, so let me give you a little bit of context to that. So our elementary only tests, and our middle school, high school only tests. So every 3 years, we have to retest special education students, and we also have to do initial evaluations. So that's primarily their role. They don't service students in any capacity about providing services and instruction. Does that make sense?
So all they do is test.
That's it. And present at the meeting. Yeah. So then at the elementary level, we do have counselors. There's 1 in each building, but that 1 counselor in the building is then responsible for all of our general ed initiatives, as well as our special education services. At the middle school, we go up to 4, and at the high school, we go up to 6.
So before we had school psychologists, what do we do?
I don't know.
Contracted.
Oh, we contracted, yeah. Yeah.
So the special ed teacher for elementary, the top one, that's different than one from the previous presentation.
So they kind of go hand in hand, but they are different. So Liz's recommendation was for a general ed, a special education teacher for co-taught inclusion setting. This is for therapeutic, so those students that have a higher need. What this also does is if we end up opening up a position for a therapeutic, we then have another teacher available to float in the inclusion. So it's kind of we would need both, because then one would be freed up if we hired for a therapeutic. And that's similar with the counselor too. So we wouldn't need that counseling request filled because we'd fill it with the psychologist. Does that make sense? Okay. And then the last one, oh, what? I have more requests, Sam. Don't rush me. This is my big moment. So my last one is, we currently have Jackie Wheelock, who's one of our retired team chairpersons, speech language pathologist, managing our early education coordination. That started as a nice 10-hour gig, doing meetings, managing the referral process, and putting students in placements in the elementary schools. It has expanded beyond anything that we've expected. I think that when we came out to you in November-ish asking for a 3rd pre-K teacher, because of that number, we're looking at an expanded workload on Jackie as well. And she has informed us that she would like to really just retire this time. So that is where that early ed piece is coming, and that's where it currently is now. It's contracted with Jackie. And then the other thing is I'm currently the out-of-district coordinator. That is also managed, but could be managed even better if there was someone who had time to dedicate to it. I feel like sometimes my time is spread across 5 or 6 platforms, and none of them really well. So that's where that piece is coming in, so that it would be one person to manage both of those opportunities. Questions on that? Thanks, Sam.
Before Jackie, who managed the early ed, or it just wasn't as big of a need?
I don't know, to be honest. Did it before Jackie?
Harrison.
Was it part-time?
Well, it was 0.8.
0.8, okay, so there was a coordinator.
What position would you put in first?
Oh.
Well, you can't say that.
Well, I made it one position purposely, because I figured you might ask me
Well,
that.
that's the problem.
We're not getting to prioritization.
And that's a little bit of a problem.
No, this is my prioritization, all of these.
Yeah, exactly. That's $400,000.
Yeah, can I finish though? Because I think I'm gonna get to the money piece later on that might be
Okay.
helpful for you. All right, Sam, I'm ready. So therapeutic needs, so just to kind of substantiate where my recommendations are coming from, so they're data driven. So if we look up here, this is our therapeutic needs. So at the top, you have 504 data. So currently at the middle school and the high school, the total number of 504 plans are indicated in that first column. So we have 55 at the middle and 80 at the high school. And then when we go into our 504 plans, emotional, so their primary disability category is emotional. That doesn't mean that they don't have other disabilities, but the one in which they're receiving services for and they're eligible for a 504 or an IEP is under that primary of emotional. So if we look at the number of plans at the middle school for emotional, we're looking at 29, and then high school is 42, and then I put the relative percentages. So we're looking at about 53% of our 504 plans in both buildings are on for emotional disabilities.
So is that number up or down from the previous years?
I don't have data from previous years for the 504s. Yeah. And then the IEP data, I did the same thing for you. I created a chart with at each level, elementary, middle, high school, audit district. Obviously, our audit district numbers are through the roof because that's where, we don't have that programming currently. So if you look at it, our elementary, same thing, IEP totals, primary percentage at the end. And then the only thing I will say here is that the elementary is a little deflated because that is an early age to have a mental health diagnosis. So a lot of our students who may have mental health disabilities and social emotional anxiety, it's not diagnosed that early. So there's another slide that's coming up that I'm going to give you a little context with some qualitative data because the numbers here don't really support because we're looking at students that are undiagnosed at that point because of their age. Okay, any questions on this?
Yeah, do you have any future projections or understanding about what may change in, let's say, 3 years from now?
No. So this is based on the current IEPs that are in the system.
Yep.
So if these students remained eligible for services, they would stay where they are. Anyone who's coming in, I wouldn't have a projection as far as who's coming in or who would be found eligible. That it's hard in this field to do that longitudinal kind of like expectation. I don't have the same criteria, like I don't have population numbers to go by.
See, I'm just trying to come up with a justification for the resources you're requesting. See what I'm saying?
I do.
So
I'm coming.
give me that information.
I'm coming.
Okay.
I'm creating a
Okay.
story for you.
Okay.
I am. Okay. Ready? So this is the bridge or the return to school services program that's in place at the middle school and high school. So this is in effect for any student, IEP 4504 or otherwise. If there is a long-term absence due to a medical or a mental health need, these students are able to come back in and receive some specially designed instruction and support around academics and clinical. So this is a program that we put in place at the middle school in 2018-19, and then at the high school 20 and 21, but January to June. I combined the data for privacy. So because the numbers are so small and it's a small population, I combined middle school and high school just to ensure that there's no ability for anyone to be identified, because this obviously is a sensitive topic and we want to be thoughtful of that. But I also wanted to be able to provide some information to create some context as to why these requests are coming through. So this is the information. Hospitalizations are the top row of how many students we've seen hospitalized. Using the return to school services is the next, and then repeats are kids that have used the return to school services more than once. And this is not, when we look at this is not necessarily 504 IEP students. This is all of our students. All of our students have access to this. This is a general ed initiative, and it's supported by a para-educator for the academic component, and then an adjustment counselor for the therapeutic part. Okay, any questions on that? No? Okay, next slide. So our elementary needs, again, because our numbers don't tell the whole story, because of the early diagnosis and the ages of our students, this is a little bit of a qualitative information to kind of help you create context at the elementary level. So class instruction for all students is done by Kathy and Evan currently around self-regulation, self-awareness, bullying awareness, positive friendships, all of those things that are just embedded in our general curriculum for our early learners. And then ongoing groups, we have approximately 63 students right now receiving group with the counselors. If that's in social skills, anxiety, self-regulation, there's a well-being group, and the general ed students were identified using our panorama data. And that, again, is not anything to do with special ed or 504s. This is our general ed students who, looking at data or looking at presentation came up, and there are some concerns. So this is the counselors that are working with our general students as well. And then on the right, just a little bit of data, because again, I have to be very cautious with the low numbers and identifying locations. But we've had 8 elementary students referred out for crisis. We've had 2 repeat referrals, and then we have approximately 10 kids who are receiving significant behavioral supports, and that's a collaboration between counselor, BCBA, teachers, interventionalists, and then our staff. Any questions on that? Oh, here it is. So this is the financial impact. So when we talk about it, and I understand this is a big ask, I understand I'm coming in with, close to $500,000 in staffing request. So when we look at it, cost incurred this fall. So last year we had 3 students in the district who required therapeutic programming. We did not have the appropriate programming for those students. We did need to look outside of the district to support their needs. What I have here is the total tuition cost, the transportation cost, and the total that it costs us for not having programming in the district. There's numbers underneath it, but I can tell you that one of the transportation lines was close to $60,000. So that's the piece. Potential cost, so when we look, again, at this point, we're able to meet the needs, but we do have some volatile students that have behaviors, that have needs. We are doing a great job managing that. We're putting all of our supports in place. We're utilizing our BCBA, we're utilizing our counselors. In the event, though, that this handful of students is unable to be successful in the supports that we're in, I averaged $90,000 per student, which is on the lower end, because that would be a lower end cost per student, to the total of about $360,000 we potentially could incur for these handful of students that we're currently working with.
Is that $90,000 a reflection of 2022-23 prices?
It's current prices, yeah.
Okay, it's current
It
prices, so
doesn't
it doesn't
include
include the
14 plus.
14 plus
It doesn't.
percent the state said, raise your prices. Okay, sorry.
It doesn't.
All right,
Sorry.
that's okay. So the reality is that potential cost on the right is 90,000, that potential on the cost is about 105,000 per student. You
Yeah.
wanted us to do
I just wanted to see if you were paying attention.
that.
So this, I think, Sean, is the slide that you were waiting for.
So you're saying that we really don't have any historical data to tell us whether this is changing, right? And we don't have any future projections to say where it's going. Just
I don't understand what you're
the
saying.
problem that we're incurring, the potential cost, $90,000 per student, incrementally above what we spent last year. Is that something that is going to permanently be in place for 5 years?
You're saying that
What is
this current $248,000 is money we're spending outside of the district today.
Right.
That if we had the right programming in place, we could bring this back in.
Yeah,
And
has
the
that
potential cost for
occurred?
this cost.
Has
last year.
that been sustained cost for the last 5 years?
Those just went out. So what I'm saying is the spreadsheet, the first one I showed you was the cost every year.
Yeah.
We've been able to maintain a stable cost because our number of kids going out hasn't gone up, it's gone down.
Yeah,
Right?
if you remember.
So
okay.
if we maintain 35 kids out of district, the budget that we currently have this year would have been times 3.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what
So-
happened is, can you go back to that slide, do you mind?
Yeah, slide 6.
There it is. Okay, so if you look and at the bottom, so FY20, we had 35 students out. And now we're at a point where we have 20 students out, okay? But if you look at the total cost, 3.4 million in FY21, 3.488 million, we're not seeing money go down, even though we're seeing
Right.
11 less kids.
Right.
So in the event that we didn't decrease the number of kids out, we would have seen that, up another probably million and a half. Does that make sense?
Yes, it
Okay.
does.
All right, now we can go back.
So
It's really hard to project because I don't have hard figures. I can't use the inflation rate. You know what I mean? Like with me,
No,
there's.
that's understood, but even if you took those out of it, that should be what we're looking at
almost upfront in this presentation.
because I think we're all familiar with the fact that
There's more cost if we don't provide the services.
Right.
we know that concept,
Yeah,
right? We get that with BDT as well.
yeah,
So if there's a way to say, look, this is my strategy, if you will, for managing costs over the next 3 to 5 years. And by the way, I project that we're going to have additional problems with inflation and things like that I can't quantify.
right.
Then you make the story crystal clear to everyone, right? But I was just having a very difficult time figuring out where the justification was for the resources.
Okay,
So now I think I'm with you.
okay, perfect.
If we add the additional therapeutic staff, what percentage of those 20 students get repatriated back to our?
Yeah, so I wish it was that easy. So that's why we talk about proactively providing services. It's very difficult to bring students back in district for a variety of reasons, right? They've been here, they haven't gotten what they've needed. There's some residual from whatever has happened in the past to get them out. They become very comfortable with the environment that has been successful for their child. It's a lot of trust building. So that's really where, that work as an out-of-district coordinator is important. So yes, we do bring students back, but it's a lot of work, right? Because you have to then say, hey, we've established programming and this programming is the right fit, even though you love where you've been for the last 4 or 5 or 6 years, we really want to bring you back because.
All right, so given that fact, then wouldn't it be more prudent to go a stepwise fashion into this investment? Because we don't know that we're going to get all that money back.
So the savings comes not from bringing the students back, it's from preventing more students from leaving as the older students age out of the program.
Correct. Yeah.
The numbers drop down.
Yeah, because we can project.
That's the type of logic that I need in the presentation. That's what I'm saying. It's like, I just need to understand where the assumptions are so that we can start making decisions because $500,000 is a big ask.
So that's what
I think. we'll
So
have to
there's a
look at it in the
prioritization,
context
there's
of
a, yeah, we do, yes.
I mean, we've asked everybody else to come here
Yeah.
and put their asks to us. And these are your asks.
Correct.
And the question, I think you've actually laid out fairly well, what you think the driving point is and why you need to make these asks.
Yeah, and I think that's why I started off with the visual of, you don't have control over tuition and transportation. And so once they're out, those are things outside of your control. Right. So how do we then prevent that? We prevent that by providing programming so that we do have that control.
And I think coming back to it, Sean, your point around, I think we'll need to discuss and decide, do we go all in? Do we take a step approach? What's the right
Yes,
approach?
that's right.
I would agree. I mean, we have lots of asks
Yeah.
that have come.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody has the belief that we're going to fund everything.
So this is a particularly, we've had our eyes on special education for a long time, and this is a very important part of our school. So it pays for us to be extremely aware of the strategy and how we're investing in this space.
I would agree.
Okay, so with that, given that, then I think we should make some assumptions and build a strategy so that we can justify that expenditure to the communities and understand what its impact is going to be to the school. Okay? I'd be very happy to, we're all going to be on the same page with trying to develop that. But we need that kind of information. I think with all due respect to the middle school presentation, I think we get a better feeling for where the priorities are there just because of the nature of its operation.
So what information do you not have that I can provide to you?
No, I think you've mattered out a lot of it already.
Sean, I'm going to disagree. I understand what you're saying, but I actually think this is one of the best student services presentations I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, okay, good.
And on the other stuff, while we talked about it in general, we haven't seen the student data yet to understand the impact of those investments.
Absolutely right.
That's all
I
I'm
think-
saying, but
I
I'm
think
just saying, I think we gotta, let's get through this.
Yes, I
And then we'll
understand.
get to the next.
Let me just make one last point.
Sure.
I'm trying to make it so that we have presentations, especially in critical areas, that are, that understand what the strategy is for investment and start explaining that up front instead of having to go dig it out. Not really intending for any,
No, none taken.
I'm not trying to.
No, I feel good in my presentation.
This is a good amount of information. It does give us a lot of perspective. But it's only after conversation that we figure out what the strategic points are. Okay?
Yeah, great.
That's my point.
So any questions about this slide? Okay. And then my last
Except your
slide,
number should really be 1 to 5.
Yeah, all right.
With the 14%.
trying to put
And I
me
think the other point to make is that every area we've seen so far is a critical area.
almost done. Then my last slide is just future needs. So looking at future needs, we're expanding opportunities for our early learners. As I talked about, our pre-K is exploding and we have all kinds of kids who are excited to join our community. We want to make sure that we're able to meet their needs and get them in here and get them excited about learning. Expanding community-based opportunities for our high school, ages 22. So that was a little bit of a setback during the pandemic. Some of our community partners are still not comfortable bringing in. I know Milford Hospital was one that we used a lot for our community outings. They have some new restrictions in place that are not allowing our students to access that. So we met with the high school staff last week to talk about where we can create some of those community partners and where we can get some of that work up and running internally, externally. So if you know anyone who has a local business who's looking for, some great hands-on learners who can come in and contribute in a meaningful way, please reach out. We'd be happy to have that conversation. And then the last one is our newer initiative this year that we're focusing on, and that's that district-wide comprehensive mental health service plan. As I talked about, we're starting with some PD. We'll be moving into some committee work around assessing our current status of what we have available and how we employ those services, and then coming up with an action plan for a 3 to 5 year overview to make sure that we have some sustainable change in place to support all of our learners in that realm of social emotional well-being. Any questions? No? Okay.
I'll just make one comment
Yeah.
real quick. I actually really appreciate the multi-year data that you showed here. The cost, what it's up to over time, the cost per student, all those other kind of things. I think we lose that sometimes, right?
Yeah.
We get a lot of qualitative. It's good to have the quantitative pieces to it here.
Thanks.
Thank you. Great.
Well, and I think I also wanted to come in, I think it addresses some of the questions that we continually bring to you, which is about the students who are going out of district and what percentage of them are based on their emotional needs and how we might be able to invest in our district in order to prevent some of those costs in the future. So I see this presentation as directly responding to some of the questions and the data that we've asked you to bring, so thank you very much.
It's going to give us a lot to talk about as we start to outline the priorities.
Sure is.
Because there is a point that we're not going to be able to do everything.
Yep.
But the question would be is what areas do we want to do, and that kind of, everything kind of ties into
Good luck.
it. Any other questions?
Thank you. I do appreciate it.
Thank you.
And if you think of anything after, feel free to email me. If there's any information that I did forget, just shoot me a text or not text, an email. I
No,
will.
that's good. There will be some questions.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Sam. You did a great job.
All right, Sam, on to 2023-24 school calendar. First
Right.
review.
So this is the first draft of the calendar we've been working on, and there are a lot of finer details in there, but we wanted to present this for your initial just pass by and review. We'll come back at a future meeting. We did make a couple changes, which I noted. With some feedback, we decided that we flipped, instead of having our full PD day on the October date, that we moved it to the election day, so there'd be less impact in our schools. We know it's something that's come up. We've had half days in the past on that day, but the last year, but still there's a lot of people in parking, so it would kind of make sense for us to swap that.
but also just keep that half day in October. So that's one area. Something else that came up too, and it came up through our PD committee, and we had some surveys and input from our members on the PD committee, was the fact that now that we have some of the additional half days on the PD days, they've all been on Fridays, and so it impacts sometimes the same classes and same specials, et cetera, when you have so many. And so what we wanted to do is a bit of a compromise where you had on some of those long weekends that were traditional half days that we had on the long weekends, still keep that. That might help families who are traveling, and you can still keep that, but then some of the other ones we have it on different days. So this is our first go around. We're still getting some feedback on what days those would be. Something else that came up is, when do we have our conferences? So in November, in the contract, it says conferences are in November. So that's the month we have to look at. We know there's a lot going on in that month, right? Always. So the last couple of years, we've looked at having it all kind of in the 1 week. Let's just hit 1 week across. And what we found, that was a lot this year to have a PD day, to have conferences, to have the day off for everyone. So we decided to go a little bit earlier. And because something else that came up is, the later we go for conferences, then you're pushing off that one-on-one time with, parents having that opportunity to be meeting with their teachers too. So we suggested doing it the week before. So those are the changes there. But I know people in the community all want to know when's the first day of school, so that usually doesn't change. So we have kind of that draft out and when the last day of school will be. So that's where we're at right now in this process. Do you have a question, Phil?
We're back to no school in November. Sorry, it's fine. I mean.
Yeah.
I think it's better, I'm happy, to see that we don't have it all in the same week, because the feedback that I got informally from, some of the teachers that I asked about was that they did not like all the half days in the 1 week, it just made it too hard to get it worked out.
But the parents liked it.
Yeah, but we've also.
So it's either way. It doesn't
When we
matter.
talked about it, we thought,
Yeah.
we got feedback from teachers that it was pretty disruptive for some. So we thought, all right, what if we, well, we did talk about that. We thought, okay, well, if we try it this next year and we try it in that first week and then kind of get feedback on that. The only other option we had was to do it that Thanksgiving week, but the downside of that, because ultimately it's about having the interactions with, the families and our teachers, that's late, to be putting it all the way to that Thanksgiving week. So there's never, and it has to be in that month, so there's never a perfect solution for it.
Are we going around in circles?
It's fine. I don't really, we had it was that way, before, and then it went to all let's put it all in 1 week.
Yeah, we
We
tried
get it all
that.
done, and it won't be no.
So we get out far enough to forget all the problems.
It's all good. It's all good. You know what? People want it. I think it'll be fun.
But the only challenge you have with the schedule right now, just counting real quick, you go 9 of 12 weeks without going for a full week. So from November 1st to January 15th, 9 of those 12 weeks, you're missing either a half or a full day. That's hard to get a cadence going, I think. I get the Friday, I think that you said the Friday afternoon things, it's gotta be mostly around elementary, right? Because the middle school and high school are all on the day schedule, right? I don't know, I would be cautious about having, even for parents, right? It's a lot easier, I think, a lot of times.
Yeah, we know that we
to
talked
take a Friday afternoon off.
We did talk about that, so that's why we were trying, because I remember they did it in the town. I was like, I never know if they did that. You think I would know? Never. I'm like that parent has no clue. So the fact that it's a different week, I'm always caught off guard. So I get that parent, and we talked about it. And one thing was like, all right, well, what if we, you have the long weekend ones, you keep the, Friday, and then what we're trying to do with PD is to have it once a month, so you have that ongoing, and especially more in the beginning of the year up front, to go through. So it's not perfect. We'd have to really help families with letting them know the dates and upfront and reminding them and Canva images and little reminders that go out like other schools do on those dates, and maybe that'll help. And then we can get feedback too.
Yeah.
And this isn't set.
Sure. No,
This is just first go around, so just kind of think about it, take a look. It takes a lot of eyes to catch everything too, just with numbers and dates. And
But we're getting there, so we hope to come forward with that.
Just say, I for one did not look forward to having my second grader and my kindergartner home the day after Halloween on a half day.
Yeah, right.
Is that where we put it?
March 5th.
All right, that's good. That's interesting. Okay. All right. We could do it on Halloween.
There we go.
There you go.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah. All right. So anything that kind of you notice, send it our way. So just want to share that with you. Thank you.
Thank you. School committee, the subcommittee updates. Policy committee, I don't think. Do you have anything right now? No, the next meeting will be March 9th.
Real time,
March 9th, look at that.
Breaking news. Yeah.
Budget committee. We met on the January 12th and 31st. Like I said, we're getting all these presentations and pieces together, so we'll do a fun conversation as we drive to the public discussion, which will be March
The 20th.
20th.
Yeah.
Just so that people know, the governor hasn't released their budget.
Which has thrown a wrench into the whole works.
That's right, that's the normal process. The goals, we have a submitted draft and we can maybe review that at the next meeting. Does that sound good? Okay, perfect. Any other matters not anticipated by the committee within 48 hours?
The only one, Phil, real quick, is the email we had Maureen earlier, was it February 27th? I think you and I are both gone, and do we have?
Well, I think I'll be here on the 27th.
Oh, you will?
Yeah.
Okay. So, well,
I think I'll be here on the 27th.
perfect, okay.
So, sorry, I should have responded to that email. All right, then, can I get a motion? Oh, wait, I need a roll call. Motion to executive session.
Okay, roll call to executive session pursuant to MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Exemption 3 for the purposes of collective bargaining sessions with the Mendon-Upton Regional Teachers Association. The committee will return to open session after the executive session only for the purpose of adjourning the general meeting, and I so move.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, do I have to do a roll call vote?
Sean Nicholson, aye.
Eric Brown, aye.
Phil Desutter, aye.
Carrie Lawrence, aye.
Matt Hagan, aye.
Vicky Levinson, aye.
All right, thank you right now. We will clear the room for the people that need to leave.